exactly 4. All right, here we go. All right. Welcome back, everyone. For those of you who have been with us all day, it's been an awesome day. For those of you who have just joined us, thank you for being here. The first annual Common Language Story Slam has been awesome. So thank you all for being here. Yes, all right. Cool. Sometimes, the long day, lots of stories. We've gotten to hear 8 digital stories already today, learn about 8 amazing charities, and we have 4 more that we're going to hear about now. And I just really appreciate all of you being here, having conversations and engaging with these stories. And what we've been doing all day is, because it's actually a very true statement, but the coolest people you will ever meet are in the room with you today. So we've done a high five, we've done a fist bump. Let's do an elbow tap this time. I want you to elbow tap everyone around you and say, "You're super cool and I can't wait to talk to you." All right, there we go. Yes. Remember when that was a thing? That was like a real thing during COVID. You know how weird that is? That we were all elbow tapping each other? Such a weird thing. But so glad we don't have to deal with that anymore. It's great to be in the room in person with you guys. We also have tons of people logging in online. Lacey is going to be chatting with you guys who are online. So please make sure, put your name, email in the chat. Then you can talk with Lacey and all the other people. It's been awesome seeing the chat just blowing up all day. Lots of wonderful things shared on there. And, if you haven't met me before, my name is Mike. I started Common Language 6 years ago. And all the facilitators that created digital stories here today have gone through those training programs. And it's amazing to just see all the incredible stories that people are telling and the ways that those stories are having a huge impact on the world around them. And you guys now get to be part of that too. The conversations that these stories stimulate are one of the best things about them. And so we are going to be talking with each other today. We're going to be watching stories. We're going to be learning about charities. And also, hopefully everyone here will be able to take something away. Our goal always, for every screening I've ever done, is for people to leave a different person than when they came in. And one of the cool things about stories is they don't really tell you what you should know. They allow you to learn things that then are relevant to your own life. And so my hope really is that you guys will all be able to pull some wisdom from these stories that you can apply to your own life in a new and unique way when you walk out that door in an hour and a half. So yeah, for everyone who's joined us today, hopefully that's already happened. For everyone new in the room, that's what our hope is over the next hour and a half. So we've got some amazing charities. I'm actually hosting this one. It's sort of weird. I've just been sitting in the audience all day. It's been really fun to actually just sit and watch everyone chat. But I get to host this screening as well, and I also get to share one of my stories. So we're actually going to bring up our first storyteller. We're going to watch 4 stories. We're going to meet 4 facilitators. We're going to have some conversation. So I'm going to bring up the very first facilitator, Krystle. And Krystle's going to tell us a little bit more about her charity, BC Complex Kids, and then introduce the story. So here we go.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everyone. So this story was created in partnership with BC Complex Kids. It was a workshop that we did in the fall with 4 storytellers. BC Complex Kids is doing amazing work in BC with families raising medically complex children. Their mandate is to raise the voices of those families and connect the community. And so this workshop, the intention was to bring people together and connect, around their stories and just have the therapeutic experience of telling them. And Ashley is here with us today from Chilliwack. She flew in to join us, and this is her story, Breathe. Ashley is a mother. She is also a writer and a creative and a photographer, as you'll see in her story, and an advocate, working with the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation and the local hospitals as a parent mentor. Okay, and awesome. I think I'll just go from there.
Yeah, so as you watch, one thing that we're going to do afterwards is we'll be able to turn to the person next to us and just share the one thing that resonated with us in the story. And it could be a word, an image, an idea, just something that stood out to you. And often in those conversations, you get an even deeper understanding of the stories that are shared. So one thing that stands out to you. Here we go. Ashley's story, roll it.
She was born at 23 weeks, and she was an image of perfection. I was terrified of loving her more than I already did when the risk of losing her was so great. Still too unwell to walk, my husband took me in a wheelchair down to the NICU when Hazel was 2 days old. When I saw how tiny she was, the world around me suddenly felt too big. Everything I thought I knew about being a mother to a newborn ceased to exist. It felt like the air simply left my lungs and just barely trickled back in. My fear was written across my face, in stiff shoulders and in words unspoken. "She's okay, Mom," said her nurse. She took my hands in hers and guided them into the isolette as she eased my fears. She showed me how to gently hug my baby with my hands, how to change her diaper and check her temperature. She showed me how to be a mother to a micro-preemie. 32 days came and went as we settled into our new reality, each day blurring into the next. The neonatal staff the only constant I could count on within those walls. When I finally held her for the first time, it was a complicated process. We spent days practicing with an empty isolette and a teddy bear, our team patiently teaching me what to expect with a ventilator. When I felt the rise and fall of her chest against mine, I understood that the feeling of those breaths in her lungs would breathe air back into my own. Another broken piece of me put back together, I began to heal. We made our way down the length of the NICU, graduating from one pod to the next, ever closer to that door that we'd someday walk through with her in our arms. I stood in that last pod one morning, Hazel wrapped in a ring sling, tubes and cords clipped to the fabric, bouncing her to sleep. Hazel's neonatologist made his way over with a team for the morning rounds and spoke 5 monumental words. "Ashley, please give us report." I stopped and stared at him, sure I had misheard. All eyes expectantly on me, I let out a laugh. In a confident but gentle voice, he said, "You know your baby better than anyone here." So I gave report. I allowed myself to feel the confidence I had gained over our months in the NICU to guide me in the words I spoke, surrounded by a team that had given me the most amazing gift a preemie parent could get: inclusion. I was reminded we were Hazel's caregivers and her parents, that the two could and would coexist, and I felt empowered. 175 days after she took my breath away, we came home as a family of 3, and we grew stronger together. With every breath she took, I took with her. With every breath of hers, I found bravery. With every breath of mine, I found strength. And together, we took a deep breath and we found life.
Wow. Man, wow, what a story. I'll give you a second to recover. That was amazing. Man, now that I have my own kids, I feel like I'm just an old softie. And those images, I'll ask you more about them in a second, because I want to find out what that was like to take images during some of those really difficult times. Yeah. I want everyone to get a chance to turn to the person next to them, share the one thing that stood out to them in the story, and then we'll have a chance to talk with Ashley and Krystle. Ready, set, go. All right. Come on back, everyone. As with every story we've shared today, it's hard to know when to cut off the conversation because you could talk for a while. But one thing I forgot to mention at the beginning, a lot of these stories are related in somewhere to the healthcare system. And so it'll be interesting to talk more about some of those experiences. So let's invite Krystle and Heather up here. Or sorry, Ashley. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. Come on up, you guys. Let's give them a round of applause. Yes. Come on up. Take a seat. Awesome. Great. Well, thanks you guys for making the trip from Vancouver Island to be with us today, and for creating that story. It's incredible, you know. So Ashley, I mean, I've gotten to work with a lot of people who have big healthcare stories, and I can't imagine 175 days. I think you said. I mean, that's a big story, right? And that was just the beginning, right? We got to see some of the different stages of you and your daughter afterwards. So I guess my first question is, you know, how did you and Krystle work together to decide what to include and what not to include in such a big story when you only have 4 minutes?
So, like a lot of other people have said, it was really hard to narrow down my words. That it was difficult at first, and being a writer, I just wanted to write everything down. And Krystle was really good at explaining to me that we could use video and effects and imagery and to say those words without actually saying those words. And so once we kind of narrowed that down, our experience in the NICU was what we always considered to be very positive. There's always room for improvement, so I knew that piece of it, but it wasn't until we came home from the NICU that I realized that family integrated care piece isn't always the common experience for parents, and I wanted to change that. And so what I wanted to do was share how our positive experience impacted us, you know, going forward, rather than sharing that sharing the negative side of it and why we should make change. I wanted to share the positive and why we should make change, because I think as human beings, we kind of have this tendency to feel a little bit defensive when people start telling us everything that we're doing wrong. And it can take us a few moments to realize that we're feeling defensive, and by the time we realize that, we've maybe missed the first part of that message. And so it was important for me to share a positive aspect and the empowering moments, to share the same message of this is why we need to implement change, because this is how powerful those positive experiences are.
Yeah, showing what's possible, right? And I think that's such a great perspective on it, right? You know, it's very easy to find all the things that are wrong, right? And I think also I've learned a lot about the healthcare system is, you know, a lot of people, that's how they're trained, right? Is to find what's wrong and to fix it. And sometimes we forget to think about showing what's possible, not just what has gone wrong, right? And so it's really cool that was the goal of you, sort of, that your goal coming in to tell the story in that way. And so so you've been able to share it in some big ways, right? And I think Krystle was telling me you just shared it at a big conference to 350 people, and she got a standing ovation, lots of tears. And so what was it like sharing such a personal story like this in such a big way? And yeah, the response that you got to it.
So I've had an opportunity to share our story at conferences before, but it was a very broad sharing of our story, more so what Hazel's birth was like, what it was like for me having HELLP syndrome. It wasn't very narrowed down and specific like this, and it definitely wasn't through a digital story. Sometimes we'd have the odd, picture there, but it wasn't in this capacity. So this was a very different experience sharing it, and I've also never shared it in front of a crowd that big. So I learned never to ask how many people are at a conference before you present.
Yeah.
And so being able to share that with a group, and the conference was, it's called EPIC, so it's a conference that has neonatologists and nurses. Everyone's there for family integrated care. And so it was really well received, and it was really difficult to see the emotions coming out of the crowd when I was sharing it. And then afterwards, what the difference that I noticed between sharing my story before and sharing it in this way is that it sparked a lot of conversation. And there was a lot of really good conversation that came out of it, and a lot of good questions and impactful conversation that sparked afterwards. I mean, for the rest of the day, anytime I tried to go for a break to get something to eat, I was usually stopped by someone that wanted
by
to...
people, right?
Yeah. Which was great. Yeah. And I presented a poster later that day, and everyone came to the poster, and we didn't even talk about the poster, we talked about this. And it was really cool to see the power that a digital story holds. And it also, for me, learning how to reshape the way that I tell stories, it was a really great experience.
That's so cool to hear, man. And I have one more question for you. I actually have 1,000 questions for you, but one more, and then we'll talk to Krystle a bit. But I mean, there's such a powerful line in that story, right? And man, what a cool moment of what the healthcare system could look like when the doctor comes up and says, give us the report. So how did that end up being the moment that you decided to focus on? And how did that look when you and Krystle were working together?
I think that moment always stood out to me from the beginning. I still work very closely. That was Hazel's primary neonatologist. I still work closely with him. He's now the head of neonatology, and so we work closely together, and he's become a friend. And so, he was the person that was in the OR when Hazel was delivered. He was the last face that I saw before I was put under general anesthesia. And so him saying that, it was a pivotal moment in the NICU. Like, it truly was. We were already a few months into our NICU stay, and so I was starting to get nervous about taking her home. I was excited, but I mean, we knew she was coming home on oxygen, and so I was starting to think, like, can I do this? Can I really take a baby who's still sick home with me? And that moment, it was just like, I just realized that he actually believes in me. I can actually do this. And so when I decided to share this positive, like the impact of a positive NICU experience, I knew that had to be like a core piece. And Krystle was really good with kind of just centering it around that and finding a way to, when we were pulling words out of it, because I was well over the word count. Yeah, and I knew that was like the one line that just had to be there. And so I kind of centered everything else around that, because it really was so crucial, and it's something that we talk about all the time. It's funny, he doesn't even remember saying it. When I tell him the story, he's like, I said that? Yeah, but I'm like, that is how impactful that was. And to him, it was second nature. I mean, he embodies that family integrated care, whereas I'm like, you have to understand how impactful that is to parents. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and I mean, we sometimes we'll talk about rites of passage and things like that, but what about a rite of passage for moving from 175 days in the hospital back home? I mean, what a cool moment for you to say, I've got this, I'm ready. Super cool. I love it. So one of the other things about your story that is super cool is all the images. It's amazing. So I know, Krystle, you're a photographer, and I think you have that background too, Ashley, right? So I wanted to ask really quickly just a question to Krystle about sort of the imagery and how you guys chose to move and select all the images that you chose, because they were powerful, right? This is, like every image told a story. It's amazing.
Yeah, and to be totally honest, that was Ashley. Ashley was very quick at getting her images in to the storyline, because
she knew what she wanted.
She knew she had them, and we were just talking about this when we had our moment after that. Oftentimes, when we're having hard experiences, we don't take pictures, and as a photographer myself, that's the opposite of what I did in my experience. And Ashley did the same. And so you had this amazing, resource of photos that you could choose from that were really powerful. And I know one of the things that you've heard too is the video of Hazel at the end, because we often see children in hospital and we see them sick. And so how important that was that Ashley has those videos at the end that you can see Hazel now and her joy, in life.
That's actually the part I got the most emotional.
Yeah.
Because you see all this tiny little baby, and then you see her dancing around. It's just like, wow. Yeah.
I'll kind of add to that is just, like you said, the joy of it. But also I think that there's something that happens in the neonatal world where we talk, providers talk so much about quality of life for neonates and what that looks like when they get discharged home. And if you look at Hazel's diagnoses on paper, I've heard it time and time again when we walk into a room for a new specialist and they're like, wow, she's a totally different kid than what she reads on paper. And I think for me it was really important to focus on showing that her quality of life is so full and beautiful and joyful, like you said, so that healthcare providers, when they see this, that it's not everything that it looks like on paper.
Yeah, people are never what their chart is, right? I love that, right? And you can feel who Hazel is in the story versus what you read on the page, right? I love it. Awesome. Well, I mean, you guys are doing some amazing stuff, obviously, with BC Complex Kids, and so Krystle, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, I guess maybe sort of final question before we maybe check out the chat, see what people have been saying. But for you as a digital storytelling facilitator, I mean, this is a community that matters to you, and I'm sure you've got some big plans. So where are you taking digital storytelling in the future yourself?
That's a good question. I see there's so many possibilities, as we've seen today, of how to tell stories, but my heart, I think, lies in the rare disease community, and especially, with this work that Ashley's doing. My story, it's not the same, but it's parallel. I'm a rare disease parent, and so I know there are many stories in that community that need to be heard, because if we don't hear the stories from the people we're looking after, how do we know how to care for them? How do we know what services are needed? I think more of this sort of work in the future would be wonderful.
Yeah, and these stories in particular, where are they going?
Oh, these stories.
Yeah.
Oh, great question. So I just remembered. Yeah, I was like, I had this memory as Ashley was talking. So actually, these stories, UBC, they have a living library. So this is one thing that was really cool. You don't know where they're going to go. And we had a big public screening of the stories. And now I think all 4 of them are going to be brought into the UBC Living Library for students who are studying health sciences to watch. So they have access to these stories of lived experience. And I believe you're signing up to be a mentor, expert by experience as well.
Cool.
So
that's a cool title.
You can, you can actually offer the option for students to contact you or to be invited into the classroom as well. So it's really neat to see that kind of immediate impact in the learning, the future of our, healthcare professionals.
Totally. So what you're saying is this is just the beginning of Ashley going out and changing the world.
It is.
Which is super cool.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, let's check in really quickly with our online people. Lacey, what do you got for us?
We had shivers and goosebumps and tears in the chat, and lots of comments about the photography. Someone asked if you were a photographer, so you answered that one for them. And I think one really nice comment, Tash said, I love that you chose this angle to give light to what healthcare could be if we center patients in their experiences. I'm a nurse and a premature baby, so this one got me. So thank you. Yeah, lots of really great comments about how empowering and inspiring it was.
So cool. Well, hey, to be continued. Let's hear it for these guys. Ashley and Krystle is amazing. Can't wait to see what's next for you guys. So awesome. Great. All right. Great. Well, what a way to kick it off. We're gonna move on to our next story here, and next we actually have a story that was actually by Maureen, Leier, and Sig Novak. Sig started something called the Maid Family Support Society, and so it's a organization that actually supports caregivers of people who choose medical assistance in dying. And so, one of the things that I have learned a lot of working with this population, I've done a couple workshops now, which we'll talk about in a minute, is, how stigma can shut down conversation and shut down meaningful support. And family caregivers, they need help. They need help. And so when we're able to have these conversations, then we can actually offer that help. And that's what's so cool about Sig's story. Sig actually started this Made Family Support Society, and that's what the story is going to be about. Unfortunately, Sig and Maureen, they're both in Vancouver. They couldn't make it out today, but we're going to watch an interview with them afterwards, and then we're going to have a little chat with Krystle, actually, and Robin, who are here sort of connected to that organization as well. So once again, one thing that resonates with you in the story, and we'll have a chance to chat about it afterwards. So here we go. Here is Sig's story. Roll it.
I was standing in a hospice room, feeling as though I was in a fog. I thought Dad would die at home, or maybe in a peaceful place outside, like near his dahlia garden or his beloved vineyard. I thought he would get one last harvest of grapes. It was the Sunday before that Dad had signed the maid paperwork. It was our last family gathering. Dad took sips of a special bottle of wine. We laughed. We took pictures. He was still trying so hard to be his loving self. It was unsettling for me seeing him spend most of that day sleeping on the couch. I was used to seeing Dad working in the vineyard, the one he planted himself the year we moved to Penticton, the same year he started working at the hospital. That was nearly 40 years ago. At age 71, he had still been doing on-call work as a neurologist when he learned he was terminally ill on Valentine's Day, 2014. We walked together to the mailbox arm in arm after everyone had left. It's the only time I recall ever doing that. I knew that the cancer had spread to his brain. He had read his own CT scan months earlier. He had described his spine as moth-eaten. Now I could see what unbearable pain he was in. He agreed for my mom and I to take him to the hospital, and I watched him wince with every bump on the road. I often wonder how much pain that earlier walk must have cost him. We arrived at the ER doors, where we were met by a team of staff who quickly rallied around him. Once his pain was under control, he happily greeted everyone as they walked by, laughing and joking with them. That was the last time I saw him like that. I was relieved yet stunned when Dad said yes to moving to hospice. This was not part of the plan. This had never once been discussed. The hospice nurse, who knew Dad, settled him in with such tender care. Dad insisted Mom and I go home and get some sleep. We had no idea at the time that he was getting ready to leave us. When Mom and I arrived the next morning, Dad told us that he wanted to stay in hospice and have Maid the next day. He had stopped taking any pain medication as he feared losing the capacity to give consent. I felt as though we had been rear-ended. A flurry of calls, family members rushing to get back to him. When Dad heard he got the go-ahead and that a date and time was set for Maid, he seemed lighter. The rest of us were painfully and silently dreading what was coming as the clock ticked closer to 8 p.m. I had seen death, having worked as a nurse for many years. Nothing prepared me for this. We were all gathered around his bed when the physician walked in. "You look like your father," my dad said to him. Dad's last words were to the physician. As he held the young man's face in his hands, he said, "Keep doing the amazing work you're doing with Maid." "Come back," as a hummingbird, I whispered in his ear as I was holding his hand. I felt the last beat of his pulse, and like that, he was gone. We had never talked about what would happen with his body. We packed up the room quickly, not knowing what else to do. It was late. When we closed the door to go, I felt sick. My dad's May death was in 2018, just 2 years after it was legalized in Canada. It was such an incredible gift that he could die with dignity on his own terms. I started researching what MAID resources existed for families in Canada, only to discover there were few to none. I recalled my sister saying how helpful it would have been to be able to talk to someone who had been through it. In 2021, I founded MAID Family Support Society, a group of amazing volunteers who have been through MAID with a loved one. Now we support others. Now there is someone to call. I think my dad would be so proud of the work MAID Family Support Society is doing.
Wow. Amazing. I know Sig and Maureen are online, and so maybe we can check in with them in a bit. And if you guys have anything you want to share with us, Maureen and Sig, we'd love to hear it. We'll also get to see their interview in a second. But first, let's turn to the person next to us. Share one thing that resonated with you in the story. Ready, set, go. Okay, cool. All right. Come on back, everyone. Great. One of the things I forgot to mention at the beginning is that, I guess as I'm rewatching some of these stories, realize how emotional they really are. And one of the things that we really encourage when we're watching digital stories is to not be afraid of that, right? And I think there's a lot of times that we're taught in our society to be afraid of the things that we feel. And so if this is bringing up strong emotions for you, first of all, don't be afraid of it. Second of all, I apologize. I forgot to mention that it might happen. And so if you feel like you're not in a good place to watch a story like this, feel free to just hang out in the hallway, go grab a coffee and tea, come back and have a conversation. And I will mention a little bit more about what's coming up next afterwards. Again, I was just reminded of that. We did that in the first screening where we talked a lot about stigma, but I forgot to do it here. So apologies for that. But hopefully you're having some good conversation anyway. So let's go ahead and watch the story watch the conversation between Sig and Maureen and hear them sort of reflect on their experience of creating this story. And then we'll have a little conversation with Krystle and Robin. Okay, here we go.
Thanks so much for being here. And just wanted to keep it super simple and just hear from you what it was like to do the story. What was that like for you?
I gotta tell you that when you first asked me, I was nervous. I think I put off wanting to do it, actually. I've been putting a lot of thought into this, the questions you gave me for today, and I think nervousness just kept coming up for me. And it was related to a few things. And I think I was just a little bit apprehensive about going back there. And I also found myself, interestingly, I found myself doubting my writing skills. And I wasn't sure how much I was going to have to write. Although I've never had a problem writing, I just thought there's going to be pressure to write. And I think this just kind of kept me from doing it.
Right.
It also seemed like a lot of work. And I just thought, wow, do I actually have the time to commit to this? And so that was kind of the leading up to it. And then when I finally made the decision, I thought, and I did feel safe with you. That was another factor that made me do it, that kind of inspired me. It pushed me. I really needed that push, and you were on me to, do you want to do this? And I think finally I just thought, you know what? I trust Maureen, and I'm going to do this. That was my internal dialogue. I was like, just do it. Just face your fear. Just do it. The grief's going to come up. You've got to just face it. And so yeah. I mean, it ended up being a really amazing experience.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, it was just really beautiful to see you face those fears, because it was sort of evident and you were really articulate about saying, this is sort of what it was like for me. And we had the time to let that unfold, right? We just both kept checking in with each other, and I'm really thrilled that you were able to get the courage. And it does take some courage, it's the process can be super rewarding, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be easy. So you definitely had courage to fully engage, which was remarkable. So that was sort of the process piece. What was the impact for you in terms of how that landed for you personally? Curious how that's gone for you.
Wow. Okay, well, to start with my family, my sister, she watched it with me over Zoom, and she just immediately had an emotional reaction and was just so happy to see it. I mean, it was exactly what I thought. To be quite honest, like, I sent my brother it through his partner, and I said, you can kind of gauge if he's ready to watch this. So she watched it first, and then they watched it together. But he never really gave me any feedback. She just said he was moved by it and didn't really want to talk about it. And he really has had trouble with the grief process. Then my other sister's not ready to watch it. Yeah. So it was very interesting to me, just that. And I have not actually sat down and shared it with my mom yet, because I feel like my mom is still, I don't know, I just don't feel right about it. So I think I'll know when that moment's right, but that's my family. And then organization, I mean, it's easy to share it there, and I've shared it amongst the volunteers. And, I just think it's a beautiful way of showing people how I formed the organization. And I have presented it at conferences and used it a couple times. The last time was at the BC Hospice and Palliative Care Conference, and that was just an amazing reception on that video. That's really the first time where I had a really full room and people were super engaged, and then afterwards are coming up to me and say, what an amazing story. And I actually thought about you, Maureen, because you were a master editor, and you are such a gifted writer that I was like, wow, like the way you brought just the way you wrote the story, I think it really had such an impact.
Well, and to be clear, any imagery, any phrases that landed, you may not even remember that that came from you, right? So
Yeah.
all I helped you with was story structure to sort of fit it into, because it's a pretty tight format, 400 to 600 words. And so all I did was see a pattern. And that was that's really the cool part of going back and forth as well. It felt like a mutual discovery process that even it at times was like, I think we were both having insights, even perspective, on your story or seeing key moments. So, yeah.
When I watched it recently, I thought, you know what? Even rewatching it, I can see my process in it where it went from the really withered vine of his cancer, and then it went to new growth. And
Yeah.
it was almost like it mirrored how I felt. It mirrored how I had the grief before I did the story. And then as I worked through the story, I all of a sudden had the new growth of kind of a new perspective on his death. And and there was a lightening of some sort. And whenever I see that and the music comes in with the new growth and everything, I just feel, I've really kind of transformed through the process and feel so much better about him being gone.
Yeah. And that's just the remarkable thing about we humans as storytellers. We're just very, we're the only species who kind of shares stories to make sense of things with each other.
That's one of the points I had actually jotted down, is that it actually spares me from having to tell the story.
Right.
And I use the word spare because it's tiring,
Yeah.
to keep revisiting it.
Fair enough.
Even if you've resolved the grief in a lot of ways, it's still so I love putting it on and going, okay, I don't have to expend energy in that direction.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks for sharing your experience. Any last thoughts or comments? Anything else you'd like to share?
I'm just really happy now for the process, and I'm glad that I faced my fear and I moved through it with you. And it's a story that I will treasure forever. I have it. My family has it. It's like it's going to go on in our family. It's going to be handed down like a photo album of sorts. And I think that's what means the most to me.
Awesome. Yeah. Great. Yeah, it was great to get to hear them reflect on that together, right? And you can sort of see, like Sig said, she went on a journey. With a story like this, you go on a journey, that's for sure, as you create it. So Sig and Maureen were online watching. Sig said, thank you so much. And she's been watching online. There's been lots of great comments. We'll come back to Lacey in a second. But I wanted to invite Krystle and Robin up here. And let's give them a round of applause just for getting back on stage here. Krystle and I got to run a workshop with some family caregivers from the Maid Family Support Society. Robin was one of those caregivers who also created a digital story, not this one, but her own story. And so I wanted to, just so we had someone to talk to, I wanted to ask you a question, Robin. Just, as you were watching Sig's story, what resonated with you? What stood out to you?
So I've seen this story a few times, and I was saying to my table mates, to Lisa and Beth, I have watched this a few times, and I still catch something different every time, as we do in these kind of stories that have so many layers and so many nuances. And in this context, sort of looking at this here today and what we are doing and the sharing of our charities along with the stories, I think the biggest thing for me is just pride in what she has created and the privilege that I feel to be part of it. She has created something that's filling a huge need, and we see impacts of that every day. So this is a beautiful story, and if you know Sig or you talk to Sig, she will talk about her dad and how her dad was the inspiration for this organization and how proud he would be, which I know is true. And I love that is all encompassed in this story.
Yeah, you really get to see everything, how it started, but also where it is now. And Robin, you're connected with Maid Family Support Society. What role do you play there? What do you do?
I do a few different things. So I started in a peer support role, probably almost almost 4 years ago. And I joined the board of directors, and I've been doing behind the scenes work with Sig for a number of years now as well. She was looking for somebody to help behind the scenes when things were getting going, and I said sure, and now she can't get rid of me. And it's been a real pleasure for me to work with her and to help her build and run the organization. So I do a lot of our volunteer recruitment and onboarding and all of that sort of thing, help behind the scenes with fundraising and administrative things just to keep the organization going. We've done a lot of outreach over the last couple of years, and I've done a lot of that, and it's been a fantastic process of talking to organizations and making sure people know that we're out there so people can get the support when they need. So it's become a huge part of my life.
Yeah, and so, just the peer support part is really, what Made Family Support Society is all about. So what are those conversations like? What do you do when you connect with someone, and why do people connect with you guys?
So as Sig said in the story, when she started to look at what resources were out there, there weren't many. There still aren't many. And when my experience, my dad had a medically assisted death in 2021, and he told us a week before that he was planning to go ahead. And so you have this panic and thinking, oh my God, what does this involve? And I don't know what to expect. And I couldn't find any information. So we just plowed ahead. And she had just started the organization at that time. And, I had the same thought and experience that she comments in terms of her sister's comment around really wanting to talk to somebody who had been through that. And I am the sort of person who likes to know how things work. And so I went into that room the day that my dad was scheduled to have MAID, and I had no idea. And it was an absolutely awful experience for me to not know. And that's what we are trying to do for people now, and that's what we hear from people is there's not a lot of support. We are working with programs, assessors and providers and the MAID programs to make sure that they connect people to us. But what people are coming to us is basically to talk to somebody who has been through it. With any one of these stories that you're hearing here or any experience that we've had, that feeling of being less alone is a critical part of getting through something. And that's basically what we are providing is somebody who knows what that is like and somebody who can answer some of those questions as they're preparing to go through this experience themselves.
Yeah, some of the logistical things, but also what to expect emotionally, and from a family dynamic, all those types of things. So, end of life is such a difficult thing to begin with, right? And then you add in all this medical complexity and all the different emotions that you're feeling. And I think, hearing a story of someone who's been there, right? That's one of the only ways we could support someone through that. And that reminds me of the quote we shared in the last screening, my favorite quote ever, facts bring us to knowledge, but stories lead to wisdom. And that's what you're talking about, right? People need wisdom when they're in these situations to make that end-of-life experience as meaningful as it could be, in the middle of a lot of difficulty, right? And sadness, grief, yeah. Amazing. Well, I also wanted to ask Krystle one question here. Just because, Krystle, we ran a workshop together. Robin was in that workshop with us. So was Maureen, actually, as well. And, as a facilitator, as someone who's helping people tell stories about some of the most difficult moments in their life, what are some of the things that you're thinking about as a facilitator to help people do that in the most meaningful way?
The first thing that comes to mind is it takes a team. 100%. So, as we're running the workshops, it's making sure we all sort of, as the facilitators and mentors, or maybe there's a counselor there as well, knowing how to care for the people in the group, and communication is super key. So knowing what to look for when someone needs to take a break, or when maybe the story they're telling is too hard, and we need to redirect to another story. It's super important.
Yeah, and we are also doing it virtually as well.
Yes.
So
This is the first time Robin and I
know you guys get to meet in
right
person
now.
here. Yeah, this is awesome. Yeah.
So,
and so that adds in some complexity as well. And so, when you went through that process of helping people create these stories about their experiences, what was one thing that you took away from it?
I think the MAID workshops, it was my first experience with MAID, in all honesty. So hearing these stories was new to me. But the one thing that I really learned is that MAID is like an empowering tool. It was an empowering experience for people. And like you said, it's just, and in Sig's story too, they were so grateful to have that. And the stories that were created, I think they were love stories and legacy stories. So we often talk about telling your own story when you're creating a digital story. And I think this was a little bit unique in that people were telling their own story, but they were also telling the story of a loved one who'd passed. And so it was, there was a different layer of dynamic there.
Yeah. One thing I really took away from that workshop was how a lot of the stories were about, were with people who are surrounded by love and support. And sometimes you sort of hear there's bigger narratives out there about people being marginalized or not having that support or financially insecure, things like that. But a lot of the stories that I heard, there was just so much love present in those experiences that it was a new experience for me to learn so much more about what this was, right, and what this could look like for people. So, I learned a lot from that, and especially understanding what that process looks like. What does it look like for family caregivers? I think that's so important. So let's one more round of applause for Sig and Robin for sharing those stories. Awesome. Thanks, you guys, for being up here. I mean, one of the things we talked about earlier, right, is if no one tells a story, how will things ever change? And so that's definitely something that holds true for Robin and that whole group that stepped in to tell a story like this. That's really difficult. One quick thing. I'll just share one quick story. I was over in the UK not too long ago doing a presentation on digital storytelling, and I showed one of the stories made from this workshop by a guy named Dave. And so I showed Dave's story, and I had this whole workshop planned. And after we showed the story, people just started talking. I said, turn to the person next to you. They talked, and then I saw they kept talking, and they kept talking. And 30 minutes later, I said, you know what? I think I should move on with this. Do you guys feel like you need to keep talking about this? And they're like, yes. But it was amazing because I sort of knew, but I didn't realize at the moment they were in Parliament just debating medical assistance in dying in the British Parliament. And afterwards, one of the doctors came up to me, and he said, you know what, Mike? That was the very first time that I think we had an actual conversation about this topic. Because up until this point, he's like, we just stood up and yelled at each other, and he said, that was an actual conversation. He said, just so you know, I'm actually I'm part of, the medical advisory thing for Parliament, and there's a closed door meeting coming up. Do you think it would be okay if I showed Dave's story at the meeting? And I said, yeah, I mean, they're online, you can share it. And so I haven't connected with him since then, but I do know that the UK, have started that process of legalization, and it was 5 days later after that presentation, and so one of the things I love about a digital story is when you put it out there in the world, you have no idea what impact it could have on the people around you. Dave and Robin and Sig probably did not expect their stories to have the impact that it's had, and I know that Dave has gone around. He's going around to local libraries. And showing his story and having conversations with people there. Sometimes 15 will show up, sometimes 30 will show up. They'll watch the story, they'll talk about, how to support people who make this decision and their families. And it's been amazing to see how the stories are having a big impact on Vancouver Island for you guys, but also across the country and maybe even around the world. So let's do one quick comment from the chat here.
To Robin. Maureen said, wholehearted agreement, Robin, well said. And Sig said, thank you, Robin, my right and left hand. And there's just a whole consensus around that power of control, the gift of control, and just the wonderful legacy that Sig has started for her family and community.
Awesome. Wow, that's amazing. Well, okay, we're going to move on to our next story. I mean, sometimes it's like, wow, how can we move on from that? But let's watch another story. We've got a couple more. The next one we're going to watch is Sid's Calgary Society, and Melody Williamson created this story with Jackie Sillner, and we'll get to talk with them afterwards, or with Melody afterwards. And Sue will be coming up as Sarah will be coming up also. And so again, as you watch it, just think about one thing that resonates with you in the story. And of course, this story could have some emotional content, so be prepared. If you don't feel like you're in the right place right now to watch a story like this, feel free to meet me in the hallway. We'll just hang out for a few minutes, and then we can come back. All right, here we go. Here is Jackie's story. Roll it.
Life was pretty darn perfect. May 29th, 1999, Brianne Michelle completed our family of 4. I was so lucky to be a stay-at-home mom to 2 brilliant, beautiful girls, Cassandra and Brianne. We lived our days full of breakfast with Grandpa, music and swimming classes, play dates and visits to the zoo with friends. The evening of December 27th, 1999, will forever be remembered as the moment my world flipped completely upside down. I am now and will forever be a SIDS mom. A label I didn't want or understand. As time slowly, painfully moved forward, I searched and searched for a medical explanation. I found many research projects, all with plausible theories, but nothing that fit. Why? Can someone please tell me why? 9 years later, I remember sitting on a lakeside beach, keeping track of my 3 kids, having a water fight around us, and reading a book called The Summer House. In this book, a woman had the chance to go back in time to relive 3 weeks of her life. She would have to accept the consequences of the choice forever. Around me was pure chaos, and yet inside, my world was in slow motion as I reflected on which 3 weeks I would relive. My mind went to the night of December 27th, 1999. That had been my deepest desire. To go back and change that night. To just wake up and find it was a nightmare. I knew by now that that wasn't going to happen. But in that moment, another truth rocked me. I watched Evan and Krystle, my 2 rainbow babies, laughing and racing around me. I thought about all of the other SIDS moms I had connected with, the friendships that had deepened as I worked through my grief. I thought about the many, many lessons I had been forced to learn on this journey. I will always honor my beautiful Brianne. But was I prepared to lose all of this? What was right in front of me at that moment? Peace started to settle in around my heart. All of this time searching for the how, the why, and the purpose of Brianne's life. The answer is simple. We have very little control in how life happens. Life is extraordinarily messy. But within all of the mess is the beauty and the connection. Without losing Brianne, I wouldn't have Evan and Krystle. I wouldn't have learned how precious each connection is in our lives. Having known true sorrow, I also know and honor true joy. Each day, I choose to live life to the absolute fullest. Whatever comes my way, Brianne helps me see the rainbows through the rain. And the truth is, I wouldn't change that.
Wow. What a story. Man, there's a lot of wisdom in these stories. It's hard to pull out something, but hopefully you all connected with something that resonates with you. So turn to the people next to you. Share that one thing, and then we'll have a conversation. Ready, set, go. All right. Great. Yeah. Again, there's one thing that really stood out to me in the story is I love the first photo, black and white, right of her face. And then the second one, it's reversed and it's color. And there was a few comments online about people saying, that shows the change in someone's life. And it's such a visually cool way to represent the emotional journey that she went on. So let's have Melody and Sarah come on up here. We're going to chat with them for a minute. While they're coming up here, I'll head over here. There's been actually lots of comments online, and I've sort of been ignoring you guys online. Apologies. But do you want to share a little bit about what people are talking about online, Lacey?
Tash said the imagery changing from black and white to color as she realizes what she's gained from it all and the change in perspective. Thank you so much for sharing, Jackie. Shirley said the acceptance of deep sorrow as a necessity for pure joy. Thanks for sharing. Another powerful message, Jackie. Love what is before you and cherish every waking moment. Powerful message in the light of your loss of Brianne. Thanks for sharing.
Wow, amazing, hey? Thinking about loss and joy and how sometimes those two help us understand each of them, right? So, yeah, well, I'm excited to chat with you in just a second, Sarah. But I want to start with Melody, just because you've been friends with Jackie for a while. And so, getting to work with a friend on a digital story is a unique experience. It's really sort of... So what was that like for you guys as you decided to dive into this story?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, it was a lot of things. I said in an earlier session that, when it's time to tell a story. And I've been with Jackie. We've been friends since shortly before this happened with Brianne for many, many years. And I've really wanted to do something to honor what she's done for other people who have gone through the same thing. And I think the universe just aligned and said, this is the time. Because once we decided, there was no turning back. And on one hand, I'll say that it's a real privilege to get to do it with someone that you have known for so long and care about and respect and love so much. And at first, I look at it and go, the process went really well because we know each other so well. We have such a trust. And so sometimes you don't have to say as much. We're going back and forth, and it's like instantly Jackie gets what I'm going for, and vice versa. There's that feeling, which was incredible. But then I will just share with you right now, it's different when you watch it again later. And what it does is it reinforces for me just how much I honor the strength of Jackie Sillner. She's an incredible woman, an incredible mother. And so it's interesting how in the beginning it's like, yeah, we've got this. And I know Jackie, it took her, she's the one who had to go through the work of actually taking what we talked about and then working through that herself. And I know that's not easy. But it's interesting to go through and think, what a privilege to do this. And as a facilitator and a friend, going, I've seen the story, but today, in this setting here, right here now, I got something even deeper. Yeah. And so it was just a privilege to do.
Yeah, I think, it's funny, JC and I were just talking about this. There's something about seeing a story up on the big screen with a group of people who care about what they're watching. That changes that experience. And as you're sitting there working on building the story, you see little bits and pieces, right? And you're sort of embedded in the creative aspects of it, but then you see it up on the screen, and there's something different about that. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing, to think about the things that we could learn from the experiences of our own lives, right? And we just don't often view our life like a story, like a film that we can learn from. And I think that's partly why it's so powerful to see it up on the big screen, because it's your life, but it's something that is also teaching you at the same time. And so, yeah, I mean, for you, I guess, for you working with SID Society, Sorry, I'm going to say that wrong. Sid's Society of Calgary, of Alberta.
Sid's Calgary Society.
Sid's Calgary Society. I knew I got it wrong. Sorry. So I wanted to. So this is a topic that really matters to you. But then there's also
Yes.
Sarah's experience of running the organization. So Sarah, as you watch the story today, you obviously have walked through this with so many families. And the work that you do supports these families in really profound ways. What was it like for you to watch it up on the big screen? We heard what it was like for Melody. What was it like for you?
Yeah, just how much you can relate it to your own story. And like I was talking with Jill, she's also a bereaved mom to Hazel. So we connected in the first story too, just seeing Hazel's name up there in a different way. And Jackie's a mentor to me, so it's powerful in hearing it, and I just can't say enough about the value of sharing a story. And when Sig talked about in the last one, like this is a legacy, and that's a huge part of bereavement and grief, and that journey is meaning making and legacy making. And so for us to have the opportunity to work with Melody, to create these stories, Jill, Krystle, me, Helena, going forward based on Jackie's story, and it just forever links us to one another, but to other people that get to hear our story too. And I think it's going to be so supportive to our organization because it is hard to tell a story, and every time the story is slightly different, but here it is. I've seen it a couple times now. This is the first time hearing it. I haven't been able to hear it yet. I've just been able to watch it. So to hear it today, just thinking that legacy and to hear Brianne's name, and that's a big deal for us as bereaved parents, to hear our children's names, and for them to shine on this stage too is pretty remarkable. So. Yeah. It's a wild experience.
I think, it's seeing it up on the screen, like we said, right? And so I guess one question I had for you also is, as someone who's had a similar experience, what was an image that really stood out to you as something that was really meaningful?
Well, it's wild, and we talk about this lots in the bereavement community about dates. And Brianne died one day before my daughter Quinn died. So December 28th and 27th, seeing them, I don't know, that's the image that sticks out. Always the obituary cards, no matter how many times you see them, seeing it up on the big screen, the dates, that's the image that stuck out to me. And also seeing Jackie, I adore her. And like Melody said, they've had a friendship for so long, and I'm so fortunate to be able to witness that with Jackie all the time too. And just witness her from black and white to color. And she really paved the way for me. I was saying to Jill before, Jill, Krystle, and I are all coming up to 10 years. And we remember meeting Jackie and thinking, there's absolutely no way I will ever get to a point where I can say that's 10 years. And now for Jackie to say it's 20 years out, right? It's just remarkable. And to know that we're connected forever. Yeah. It's powerful. The numbers, always the numbers for me.
Yeah, the numbers, yeah. The image that really stood out to me was at the end, all the grown-up kids, right? It shows the 20 years of journey that she went on. I think it was incredible. Of course, also, the way she described the water fight, right? She's sitting there, she's watching a water fight, and laughing, probably enjoying the show a little bit. And here's this thing that she's thinking about. And it just sort of shows, I think, a lot of this stuff sticks with you, right? Yeah. And it's not something that is, I figured this out, now it's over, right? It's an ongoing thing that happens, and it can come up in lots of times in lots of different ways. That's one of the things I love about her story, is it just sort of normalizes that for people. And so they're like, well, next time I'm on a family vacation, I feel that way. It's okay, right? Because Jackie was there too, right? And look where she is now. So
absolutely. And it's how we live our life every day, like trying to balance the grief and the joy. And we say that all the time, and how you can do that. And for Jackie to say it up here and listen to it and watch her, even though she's told us, we've shared each other's stories thousands of times, and every time it's slightly different and just so powerful. And then you think, oh yeah, I remember when she told me about the lake and that profound moment, right? But to see it digitized and with music and with the images is just, like I said to Jill, there's 5 or 6 different themes that come out for me in 4 minutes. Like, that is so powerful. Like, how did that happen?
Seriously. How much can you learn in 4 minutes? Well, let's watch a story and you'll find out. Yeah, seriously. Yeah. Yeah, and often those lessons are so deep and profound, right? And I think, a lot of the coolest thing about a story, we've talked about this a couple times today, you go back and you watch it again at a different time, a different place, and you learn something totally different. And I think that's what is so cool about offering a story like this and putting it out there in the world, is people can take what they need from it at the time they need it. And I think that is very cool that you guys are sort of walking on that journey now to create stories that can support families like this. So amazing. Awesome. Well, let's, one more. Do you have any final comments there, Melody?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say I'm very excited about the fact that SIDS Calgary Society is moving forward and that more parents are going to get to tell their story. That warms my heart, and I know it warms Jackie's heart, and I know it's going to contribute to helping so many other parents that are going to go through a similar experience, even though each one is unique. And the only last thing I'll say is that it's pretty incredible to take like a 25-year relationship and to be able to reflect on that, and it happens. It all goes zoom, 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 zoom through the whole thing. You go back to moments, right? And so just to say how this storytelling process is a privilege, whichever end you are at. I've been the storyteller, been the facilitator, and again, to do it with a friend is just like, it's reverberating many different layers as we speak. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. Jackie's in the chat. Okay, Jackie has a message. Here we go.
Jackie says, aloha from Maui. And she says, I'm so sorry I'm not there in person. I absolutely love you. My grief journey began 25 years ago. Throughout these years, I've had many aha moments that allowed reflection on what I've learned. With Melody's amazing guidance in telling my story, all those small lessons came together to the biggest aha moment, the profound purpose of Brianne's short life. Beautiful.
Awesome. Well, Jackie, thank you for being with us online. Thank you guys for coming up and chatting about this. Let's give these guys a round of applause. And for Jackie as well. It's awesome. Yes. Amazing. Yeah. It's amazing, big stories in 4 minutes. And I think, our final story of the day is one of those. It's a very big story that is, I think, portrayed in a really compelling way in just a few minutes. And so if it's okay, Teri, I will introduce, because I got to make this story with Teri, with Greg's Wings. And I first met Teri, I don't even know how long ago. I think it was maybe 10 years ago. And Teri called me up. She'd seen one of the films I made, and she said, Mike, we're thinking about making a film and we'd like to do something really cool with it. And I sat down with her and I was like, I don't really know if I have anything to offer, because everything she told me was already way better than I had ever thought. And so now it's really cool to get to see the story that you guys will get to see, because it covers over those last, I think, almost 7 or 8 years, and doing something with a story, and doing profound things with a story. That their family created, a film that their family created. So in some ways, this is a very meta story. It's a film about a film. And also the way that film has influenced so many people, thousands of people around the country, to improve the healthcare system. So we'll talk a bit more about Greg's Wings, and we'll get to chat with Teri afterwards. As usual, think about one thing that resonates with you in the story as you watch it, and you'll be able to chat with each other before we have that final conversation of the day. So here we go. Teri's story. Let's roll it.
Have you ever thought of making a film? My medical students need to hear Greg's story. The question took us by surprise. When I present with you, it's amazing the impact your story has, but I don't want you to have to show up with me all the time. We had connected with Ward through the Health Quality Council of Alberta, and our work with him was going well. It felt like he was also committed to understanding the context of Greg's death and what health system changes needed to happen. We all looked at each other. Yeah, we can make a film about it. We had no idea what we had committed to. When reviewing the script, memories of Greg flowed through my mind. His big dreams, not only for himself, but for everyone around him. How he loved to debate and help solve problems. How he could focus on what really mattered, what could really make a difference. I heard his voice on the phone telling me about his cancer diagnosis. Heading home to be with family, waking up to a loud noise, running upstairs, and seeing him lying in the bathroom. I remembered our first question to the hospital CEO when we finally met with them. How often does this happen? We wanted to understand the context. We wanted to know what happened, and we wanted to make sure that it wouldn't happen again. After a few meetings, we just felt more frustrated. We didn't get the answers we were looking for, but more importantly, it didn't seem like things would change. As I was driving home from the first day of shooting, I was tired, elated, and thoughtful. There had been so many challenges to get to this point. Funding issues, finding a producer, the production crew, casting, writing the script, table reads, location scouting, and seeing those first few screenshots of what we had filmed felt incredible. Greg's story, our story, could change things. I had stayed in the back the whole day, just watching all the different roles that were needed to film just a few seconds of content. I witnessed how everyone on set understood how they were contributing, swapping light bulbs to get the lighting just right, getting ice packs so the director of photography wouldn't overheat, the director guiding the team through their performances. The attention to detail was amazing. Not a hair out of place or a logo that wasn't taped over. Everyone knew their role, but you could also feel how everyone wanted to support each other and had a shared commitment to the project. I joked with some of the medical school team that we really should be filming the crew. It was a perfect picture of what the healthcare system could be. 7 years after that first day of shooting, I have now facilitated over 700 screenings of the film around the world, in classrooms, clinics, and conferences to over 50,000 students, healthcare providers, and future healthcare leaders. After every screening is a conversation, and I get to hear firsthand the frustrations, experiences, and stress that they all carry. I wish the culture in healthcare was more like what we witnessed on set. I wish that everyone could feel supported like we did. Greg was always seeing the possibilities, and I'm excited to play my part in creating a healthcare system where working together is how everyone thrives.
Wow. Yeah, it's a beautiful story. I have lots to say, and I can't wait to talk to Teri about it. But first, I want you guys to have a conversation, opportunity to have a conversation. So turn to the person next to you. One thing that stood out to you. Ready, set, go. All right. Great. It's great to see everyone having a good conversation. I always love it when I cut people off, because that means there's lots of good things coming. Come on up, Teri. Let's give Teri a round of applause for creating that story, but also for being here today. It's awesome, Teri, to get to watch the story with. I mean, it's amazing, right? When we think about the impact of a good story that's well told, and the way that can change people and help them glean the wisdom they need. I think Greg's Wings has sort of taken that to the next level. 50,000 people, 700 screenings. I mean, talk about a story changing something, And one of the first things that happens whenever I meet anyone who works in the healthcare system, they say, "Oh, you do healthcare storytelling? Have you ever seen Falling Through the Cracks?" That's the first thing they say to me, because they all know it. They've all seen the story, and it's amazing to hear the impact it's had on their lives, that they remember it. So Teri, I guess my first question for you is, I mean, in a way, like I said, it's a story, it's a film of a film. What was it like for you actually being the director, editor, instead of being someone who was watching what was happening on set? What was it like for you to make this story?
Yeah, and I think after watching all of I missed the first 4 this morning, but the other digital stories, I'm so impressed by the impact that the work that goes into these digital stories can have, like reflecting on what we did to produce this. These stories can be so impactful with, I do not want to give the impression that these stories are easy. They can be very hard as well. But, the production of the film was a big, months long. We shot over 4 days, but it was lots of planning and prep before that in order to pull off that film. And I think lots of these digital stories can have the impact and spark the conversation, which I really appreciate with our film, but you don't necessarily need to have the professional director and a big expensive equipment and everything in order to have an impact. And so that, I appreciate being able to go through that process and being able to hopefully share that this is something, because we also, when we share, and I'm sure lots of people have this experience as well, when we share the film and our story, people share short stories with us. Yeah. And in some ways, they want to share with us, and I don't know what to do with it. But being able to point to a process that people can go through to be able to share their own stories is something that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, it's cool. You hit on a bunch of really cool things. One of them is, that idea that people always respond to stories with their own stories. And I think that's what's so amazing about, the work that you guys are doing, Falling Through the Cracks, is you're starting these conversations where people can actually start to share their stories of being a healthcare provider or working in the healthcare system, or, and that's something that we don't give healthcare providers an opportunity to do with very much, right? They're just like head down, work. And being able to stop and pull back and reflect and respond to a story with their own story. What a cool opportunity that you guys give them, right? And so, everyone just got to experience what it's like to have a story, so what are your screenings like? What are some of the conversations that you have? And then I also want to ask you a bit more about the digital story, but tell us a bit more about those.
Yeah, so a lot of those screenings that we've done have been, there was a few where we submitted into conferences and stuff, and but a lot of the vast majority of them has been word of mouth. So they see it in a conference and want to bring it back and share it with their teams. And so there's already sort of, we know that there's at least some sort of friendly faces in the room. There's some reason why we're there. And then I think when we share the film, we've learned that there's some very common themes that come up in the discussion, and to just trust that it'll come up and allow it to come up in the discussion instead of people don't want to be lectured at immediately after the film. There's been a couple of times where that happened early in the beginning, because quite often we'll sort of go present at a organization's team meeting or in a hospital or something, and they put a panel of people on the stage and everybody sort of lectures at the audience a little bit. And I think that the conversation after the film is what we've realized is really important. And that I think is some of what really resonates with people, is being able to have that time to reflect and have those discussions. And we saw that really early on with the medical students as well, because the reason for creating the film, as it was depicted in the digital story, was Ward wanted to be able to share Greg's story with the medical students when he was teaching. And I remember the first time we did it with all the medical students, they sort of had a plan. We had a panel discussion, and then they broke out and went into small group discussions, and sort of like having to cut people off. Yeah. They were supposed to do an activity in those small group sessions, and it fell apart for most of the facilitators because the students wanted to just keep having that discussion and reflecting on it. Yeah. And I think some facilitators in those small groups may have tried to push the activity, and some of them just no, this discussion is valuable enough. They're learning through this discussion, and so we're just, I think that was probably the first time that we were like, okay, no, we need to make sure there's time for that after the film. Yeah, time for conversation. And I mean, it's amazing. I mean, 700 screenings, and you start to see the common themes coming out, but also what I love about what you just said is you learn to trust the process, and you know that these important themes, like interoperability, all this stuff that you're hinting at in there, in the film, it will come out when you give people an opportunity to have that conversation, right? And I love this idea about people learning through stories instead of lectures, right? And that's what I got so excited about when I first connected with you 10 years ago. I was like, wow, I can already tell this film, it's a professionally produced film, it's going to have a huge impact because it's going to allow people to have the conversations they need to have and not just lecture them, right? It's just, this is what happened with our family. And so we're sharing that with you. We're not giving you any commentary. What do you learn, right? What can be different about the healthcare system? I love that. So of course, there's wonderful photos in there of you on set and all this stuff happening. What was it actually like for you to make this story reflecting back on that time? We both had a lot of things going on at the time, but there's probably moments of reflection as you were working on it. So what was it like for you making this story? Yeah, and I think I knew that if I started trying to write out a story that I wanted to tell, I would run into a lot of the same issues that I think a lot of people have brought up around it being too long, and it's really hard to sort of focus in. And so trying to think of some kind of theme to just sort of focus on for the short story, I really wanted to be able to express some of the respect and gratitude for the team that pulled off the creation of the film, because and I can't remember who actually said it, but if we had to tell the story over and over, I think Ashley had maybe commented on that, being able to hit play and have the film tell the story for us has been, there's no way we would hit 700 of trying to explain what happened, standing up on stage and giving a speech explaining what happened. It's emotionally exhausting, and it's really hard to do well. And so I'm so grateful to have the film to be able to be invited into a room, hit play, and then be part of the discussion about what we want to see and what we hope for in the future of the healthcare system. And so I think, because I hesitated a bit when you first said, lots of people have shared as well, I wasn't totally sure what I would share at this point, but I think sort of through the process that message of thank you to the team, and just we wouldn't really have gotten to the point where we've had the impact that we've had without it. So really wanting to focus on that, I think, is what started to get me more comfortable and excited about working on it. Yeah, it's always interesting, telling a story from your perspective, right? When for 700 times you were sharing Greg's story, right? It's interesting thinking about our place in the story, right? As caregivers, as family, and sort of reflecting on the impact of these stories in our own lives is always interesting. And I think, I'm glad that you said yes and you leaned into it, because it is a little uncomfortable sometimes, right? When you're not used to being that person that is talking about yourself. And so, I think that's one of the really cool things about everyone here, right? The stories that people are telling, they're personal stories,
right? And being vulnerable in that way and putting it out there, you can see the impact it can have on the people when you're willing to do that. But like we've been saying all day, unless someone's willing to tell the story, how are things ever going to change? And I think your family, you know, and I get a little emotional thinking about this, but your family really did that together, right? And you guys put out a very hard story, and you've seen it 700 times, you know, and using that difficult moment in your life to really change the healthcare system in a pretty profound way. Like I said, everyone says, have you seen falling through the cracks, you know? So you know that's having a big impact. I think that's really cool. That's really what I'm hoping to do, you know, as someone who tells stories and tries to use it to improve the healthcare system. I think it's really cool to see what you guys have done. And I just wanted to sort of affirm you and everyone in this room who chose to tell a story today for being willing to do that, because that's really cool. So let's do a round of applause for Teri, Greg's Wings. Yeah. I should also say, this is just the beginning. I mean, they've got big plans, right? And me and Teri, we meet and have coffee, and we talk. And ideas are not our problem. We've got lots of ideas. Great. Well, thanks so much to all the storytellers, all the charities. You guys are awesome. Just for being, first of all, being willing to be here and be a part of these conversations, but also being willing to share these stories in such a vulnerable way. You know, it's always amazing to me, you know, like you see the stories many times yourself, you know, and until you see them up on the big screen, you know, you sort of forget, you know, this is like the stuff that life is made of, right? It's not just the Hollywood scripts. It's not the novels that we read. This is the real story, right? And we all got sort of a front row seat, like really front row seat, you know, you guys are here, to the real experiences of a lot of people's lives over the course of the day, but also just this screening. And so we're really hoping that you guys will all leave a different person than you came here. That was our goal. And we would love also for you to be able to talk about digital storytelling with your friends and family. I think what's really cool is there's lots of people out here doing this work. Common Language has trained 80 facilitators now who are doing, we only got to see 12 stories today, but there's 80 people out there in the world doing amazing things like this. And all over the world, in Mexico and Uganda and Guatemala, you know, there's all these things happening. And so if you do want to stay connected with us, or if you want to attend another screening in the future, we have all your emails. And so you will be getting an email invite to next year's. Hopefully that's okay with everyone. You'll be getting an email invite to this next year. We don't know where it'll be held, but you're all, of course, invited back. Another thing that we like to do is, this has been a really cool experience, you know, to be here live in person, but also all the people online. You know, as we've heard, they've had great conversation. We're going to go back one more time for some comments for them. But we do something called the kitchen table night. And basically, it's we sit around, we watch stories, we talk about them, just like we did today. And everyone here is definitely invited to that. We're doing our next one on March 26th, the last Monday of March. And there are going to be 3 storytellers there. You'll get to meet the storyteller, watch the story, have a good conversation about it. It's something that we just love to do, right? We just think this is really where you learn how to live well. 31st, March 31st. Yeah, thank you, Melody. And so you can go on the Common Language, commonlanguagedst.org website, click to programs or events, and you can sign up right there if you want to be a part of those kitchen table nights. And then otherwise, if you just want to stay connected to the facilitators and to this community, please, we have a monthly newsletter, and we'd love to have you get on the newsletter list so you can hear what's going on. And last but not least, Krystle in the last session talked about the podcast. We basically have a podcast that is just like this. You watch a story, you talk to a storyteller, you hear the meaning behind the words, the images, the ideas that they got to put together on the screen. And it's just a wonderful way for you to get the story behind the story, like we sort of did up on the stage today. So lots of ways to stay connected. And finally, I want to end with getting some thoughts from the chat, and then I'll make one final comment before we wrap up here. But I think you had one ready to go? All right.
We had one that said, it's interesting to really feel how stories and experiences connect us all. Even today, with totally different lives and topics, most of them had this theme of each day I choose, which is incredible to think about and an incredible theme. And we also had a comment from our gold sponsor, Cheryl, that I wanted to share with everyone. She said, knowing the passion of Krystle and her digital storytelling colleagues, it was so easy to make the decision to sponsor this event. I was blown away by all the digital stories presented today. I'm immensely impressed with the stories, the storytellers, and the facilitators.
Awesome. Great. Let's give a round of applause for Cheryl and all of our sponsors. That was what I was going to do now. Cheryl, number one mom. Number one mom. Nice. Thank you so much for supporting us. One thing that I always like to do is just share one word, how I'm feeling right now in this moment. And so really quickly, we're going to end with that. Will you guys just go around at your table, share one word that summarizes how you're feeling right now in this moment. And then we've got one final comment because Krystle's up at the edge of the stage. So yeah, ready, set, go. One word, how you're feeling right now.
Okay, so you've had your one word, and I just want to share from the facilitators. I think a word that we can all agree on is grateful for Mike and all the work that he's put into common language and the storytelling that we do, and I did not expect this to happen. But man, like we are all here because of the work that you have done. So I'm going to stop, but I would really love all the facilitators to come up and just be on stage as we sign out tonight. Unless you have something final remark?
I don't.
Okay.
I feel like I should, but I don't.
So facilitators, come on up. This is work that you have all been doing. I'm making you come up. Get on the stage. Rebecca, you're up here too. Marley, you're a facilitator. I would love to.
Okay. Well, I do have a good quote to end on. We could say, I went to the Winnipeg Museum of Human Rights, the Canadian Museum in Winnipeg, and they had a quote there that is so apt for what we're doing today, and that says, every story, every case history, every scrap of testimony is a gift to the future. So we've talked about a legacy, and we've talked about what we want to leave behind and what we do when we're left behind, when something's taken from us that we loved. So all of you here that shared a story or that support someone, you are a gift to the future, and you are that testimony that someone else will find. So thank you. Thank you, everyone.
That's okay. That's okay.